The research vessel drifted through the darkness of space like a small fish in an endless ocean. Its name was Horizon's Edge, and it carried 30 human souls far from home. Commander Dae-sung stood on the bridge watching the screens that showed nothing but stars and empty space. His crew had been out here for 6 months, studying strange energy patterns near the Helios system. It was supposed to be a routine mission. It was supposed to be safe. "Commander, I'm picking up something on long-range sensors," said Hye-jin from her station. She was the ship's communications officer. Young and bright, always the first to notice when something changed. Her fingers moved quickly across her console and her face grew pale. Dae-sung walked over to her station. "What is it?" "Ships, a lot of them. Coming in fast from the outer system." Hye-jin's voice shook slightly. She brought the data up on the main screen, and everyone on the bridge stopped what they were doing to look. The sensors showed dozens of contacts, moving in perfect formation. They were big, much bigger than the Horizon's Edge, and they were heading straight toward the human vessel. "Try to identify them," Dae-sung said, keeping his voice calm even though his heart was beating faster. Hye-jin worked for several minutes, comparing the sensor readings to their database. When she looked up, her expression told Dae-sung everything he needed to know. "They match Vrexian signatures, Commander. It's the Vrexian Dominion." A cold silence fell over the bridge. Everyone knew about the Vrexians. They were an old empire, powerful and cruel. They moved through the galaxy, taking what they wanted from weaker species. Entire worlds had disappeared into their territory, their people taken as slaves or worse. The Galactic Council knew about them but did nothing, because the Vrexians were strong and followed the rules just enough to avoid sanctions. "Battle stations," Dae-sung ordered. "Get us moving. Put as much distance between us and them as possible." The Horizon's Edge wasn't a warship. It had some basic shields and a few defensive weapons, but nothing that could stand against a Vrexian fleet. The engines hummed to life, pushing the ship forward, but Dae-sung knew it wouldn't be enough. The Vrexian vessels were faster, built for hunting. "Hye-jin, send out a distress call. All frequencies. Use the Galactic Council emergency bands." Hye-jin nodded and began typing rapidly. "Distress signal broadcasting now, Commander. Requesting immediate assistance from any Galactic Council forces in range." Dae-sung watched the screens as the Vrexian ships grew closer. Minutes passed. The distress signal went out again and again, bouncing across the void, reaching for anyone who might help. But no response came. The communications channels remained empty except for static and the cold whisper of distant stars. "They're firing," someone shouted. Energy bolts streaked through space, brilliant and deadly. The Horizon's Edge shook as its shields absorbed the impacts. Dae-sung gripped the edge of the console to steady himself. "Return fire. Give them everything we have. Navigation. Get us into that asteroid field, grid 479. The ship dove toward a nearby cluster of floating rocks, weaving between the tumbling stones. It was dangerous, but it gave them cover. The Vrexian ships followed but had to slow down, their larger hulls less maneuverable in the tight spaces. For 3 days, they played this deadly game. The Horizon's Edge hid among the asteroids, moving carefully, using every trick Dae-sung could think of. They shut down all non-essential systems to reduce their sensor signature. They drifted with the rocks, pretending to be just another piece of stone. The crew worked in shifts, snatching sleep when they could, always listening for the sound of sensors detecting enemy ships. Hye-jin never stopped broadcasting the distress call. She sent it every hour, her voice growing more desperate each time. "This is the human vessel Horizon's Edge. We are under attack by Vrexian forces. Requesting immediate assistance. Please respond. Please anyone respond," but the galaxy was silent. On the 4th day, their luck ran out. A Vrexian patrol found them wedged between 2 large asteroids. There was nowhere left to run. The enemy ships surrounded them, weapons charged and ready. "Shields failing," reported the tactical officer. "We've taken too much damage." Dae-sung looked around at his crew. These were good people, scientists and engineers who had signed up to explore the stars, not to die in a battle against monsters. They looked at him with fear in their eyes, but also with trust. They believed he would save them somehow. But he had no more tricks. No more places to hide. "All hands, this is the commander," he said over the ship-wide channel. "Prepare for boarding. Destroy any sensitive data. Don't give them anything they can use." The ship shuddered as magnetic locks attached to the hull. Cutting torches began their work. burning through the outer doors. Hyejin kept her hand on the communications console, still sending the distress call even though they all knew no one was coming. Daesung sat down at the command chair one last time. He opened a direct channel to Earth Command, knowing it would take weeks for the message to arrive. His hands were steady as he spoke. Earth Command. This is Commander Daesung of the Horizon's Edge. We were attacked without warning by Vrexian forces. We called for help from the Galactic Council. They never answered. We fought as long as we could. He paused, hearing the sounds of the enemy cutting through their hull. Tell our families we did our duty. Tell Earth that we mattered. Tell them to remember us. The transmission ended just as the boarding doors burst open. Far away, on a beautiful world covered in towers of crystal and light, the Galactic Council met in their grand chambers. Hundreds of species gathered there, discussing trade agreements and border disputes and all the small politics that kept the galaxy running. A junior aide approached one of the representatives, a tall being from the Vrexian Dominion. Sir, there was a distress call from a human vessel. They claimed they were under attack. The Vrexian representative waved a clawed hand dismissively. Humans? Those primitives have only had faster-than-light travel for, 20 years? They're barely worth noticing. If they've gotten themselves into trouble, that's their problem. The galaxy has no time for every small species that comes and goes. Around the chamber, other representatives nodded in agreement. The humans had applied to join the council many times and been rejected every time. They were too young, too aggressive, too different. They didn't fit in with the established order. The distress call was filed away and forgotten. The council moved on to more important matters. And in the cold darkness of space, the Horizon's Edge went dark, its crew taken into the holds of Vrexian ships, bound for a fate worse than death. The galaxy had turned away. The galaxy had chosen to ignore humanity's cry for help. It was a decision they would come to regret. 3 weeks had passed since the Horizon's Edge sent its last transmission. 3 weeks of silence that hung over Earth like a dark cloud. In the Great Assembly Hall in Geneva, representatives from every nation on Earth gathered for an emergency meeting. The room was full of worried faces and angry voices. Admiral Jinwoo stood at the central podium, his uniform crisp and his expression grim. He was old for a fleet commander, his hair more gray than black, but his eyes were sharp and clear. He had fought in the Water Wars of 2089 and the Mars Rebellion of 2103. He knew what war looked like, and he knew what was coming. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, and the room fell silent. We have recovered data from the Horizon's Edge. Before the ship was taken, it managed to transmit fragments of its black box recording. The large screens around the room flickered to life, showing sensor data and encrypted files. Jinwoo highlighted several sections with a laser pointer. The crew is alive. At least they were alive when this data was sent. The Vrexians didn't destroy the ship. They captured it. They took our people. He paused, letting that sink in. Intelligence suggests they've been taken to a labor facility in the Kelros system. The Vrexians use these facilities to break down captives for genetic experiments and slave labor. A woman stood up from the front row. President Suman had been elected 2 years ago on a platform of peace and exploration. She had believed in humanity's future among the stars, believed they could find their place through cooperation and diplomacy. But now her face was hard as stone. How long do they have? She asked. Jinwoo met her eyes. Weeks, maybe less. The conditions in those facilities are deliberately harsh. The Vrexians don't see other species as people. To them, we're just resources to be used up. And the Galactic Council? What do they say? Nothing. We've sent 17 formal requests for assistance. We've invoked every emergency protocol in their charter. We've offered payment, technology, anything they want. They won't even acknowledge our messages. The room erupted in angry shouts. Representatives jumped to their feet, demanding action, demanding justice. Sumin let them yell for a moment, then raised her hand for silence. For 60 years we've tried to join the galactic community, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. We've followed their rules. We've respected their borders. We've asked politely for a seat at their table. And they've treated us like children, like insects, like we don't matter. She walked slowly down from her seat to stand beside Jinwoo at the podium. They ignored our distress call. They left our people to die. They think we're too weak, too primitive to be worth their attention. Sumin's hands gripped the edges of the podium. I say we show them exactly how wrong they are. Admiral Jin Woo, is the Eclipse fleet ready? Jin Woo straightened. Yes, Madam President, all vessels are operational and standing by. Then prepare to launch. We're bringing our people home, and we're sending a message the galaxy will never forget. The vote was swift and unanimous. Earth would go to war. At the lunar shipyards, massive doors opened to reveal what humanity had been building in secret for 20 years. The Eclipse fleet had been a project born from paranoia and hope in equal measure. Earth's leaders had always suspected the galaxy would never truly accept them. So they had prepared. 150 warships floated in formation, their hulls dark and angular, covered in armor that looked crude compared to the elegant vessels of the Council races. But there was purpose in every line, efficiency in every system. These ships weren't built to look pretty. They were built to fight and survive. Captain Yuna stood on the bridge of the flagship Retribution, watching through the viewports as the fleet came to life. She was younger than most captains, only 35, but she had earned her position through skill and determination. Her crew trusted her completely. Status report, she ordered. Her tactical officer, Minho, checked his screens. All ships report ready. Weapons systems online, engines at full capacity. We can jump on your command, Captain. Yuna nodded. She had studied every file they had on the Vrexians. She knew their tactics, their weapons, their weaknesses. The Vrexians were powerful, but they had grown comfortable in their power. They hadn't fought a real war in centuries. They were used to crushing primitive species who couldn't fight back. Humanity was about to teach them a hard lesson. Captain, Admiral Jinwoo is on the line, said the communications officer. Jinwoo's face appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Yuna could see the command center on Earth, full of screens and busy officers. Captain Yuna, you have your orders. Jump to Kelros. Rescue our people. Show the galaxy what happens when they ignore humanity. Understood, Admiral. We won't fail. I know you won't. And Yuna? Jinwoo's expression softened slightly. Bring them home. All of them. Yes, sir. The connection ended. Yuna turned to her crew. They were all watching her, waiting for the word. These men and women had trained their entire adult lives for this moment. They knew some of them wouldn't come back. But they also knew their mission was just. Attention all ships, Yuna broadcast to the fleet. This is Captain Yuna. In a few moments we will jump to the Kelros system. We're going into enemy territory to rescue 30 of our own. The Vrexians think we're weak. The Galactic Council thinks we're not worth their time. We're about to prove them wrong. She paused, looking at the faces of her bridge crew. Minho gave her a small nod. Our people called for help and the galaxy turned away. So we'll do this ourselves. We'll show them that humanity doesn't beg. We don't plead. When you hurt us, we hit back harder. When you take our people, we come for them and we don't stop until everyone knows. You don't mess with Earth. Through the communications channel, she could hear the sound of cheering from the other ships. The fleet was ready. In the engineering section of the Retribution, Jiwon made final checks on the weapon systems. The railguns were her babies, weapons that fired solid metal at incredible speeds. The rest of the galaxy used energy weapons almost exclusively, thinking kinetic weapons were primitive and inefficient. But Jiwon knew the truth. When a rod of tungsten hit a target at a fraction of light speed, shields didn't matter much. Physics was physics, and momentum was a harsh teacher. All systems green, she reported to the bridge. We're ready to make them regret everything. Yuna smiled at that. Jump in 30 seconds. All hands, secure for faster-than-light transition. The fleet aligned itself perfectly, a formation practiced thousands of times in simulations. These ships would arrive together, fight together, and bring their people home together. Jump in 10 seconds. Yuna thought about Dae-sung and his crew, suffering in some alien prison, wondering if anyone would come for them. She thought about Earth, watching and waiting. She thought about the galaxy that had dismissed humanity as irrelevant. Jump now. Space twisted and bent. Reality folded in on itself. And 150 human warships vanished from lunar orbit, racing faster than light toward a confrontation that would change everything. The Vrexian Dominion had no idea what was coming. The Galactic Council had no idea what they had awakened. They had all made the same mistake of thinking humanity could be ignored. They were about to learn the cost of that mistake. And the lesson would be written in fire and fury across the stars. The mining pit stretched down into darkness, deep below the surface of a dead world. Daesung knelt in the toxic dust, his hands bloody from digging. His breathing labored through the failing filter mask they had given him. Around him, the other survivors of the Horizon's Edge worked in similar conditions. They had been here for 3 weeks, and already 5 of them were dead. Bora, the ship's security officer, worked beside him. She was thin now, her uniform torn and dirty, but her eyes still held that spark of defiance that Daesung admired. She leaned close to whisper so the guards wouldn't hear. "How long do you think we have?" Daesung didn't want to answer that question. He had seen what happened to prisoners who worked too slowly or became too weak. The Vrexians simply dragged them away. No one came back. "Earth knows we're here," he whispered back. "They'll come," Bora smiled sadly. "You really believe that?" "I have to." Above them, in the comfortable command center of the Kelros Prime facility, Fleet Master Zenvar watched the prisoners work on his monitors. He was a large Vrexian, his scales a deep purple that showed his high rank. He lounged in his command throne, satisfied with another profitable day. "How many units did we extract today?" he asked his subordinate. 1,500 kilograms of refined ore, Master. The human prisoners are weak, but they work adequately when motivated. Zenvar made a pleased sound. "Excellent. The humans are actually more useful than I expected. Perhaps we should raid their home system next. Earth, I believe they call it. Plenty more of them there." His subordinate brought up a star chart. "Our intelligence says their home system is lightly defended. A few patrol ships, nothing significant. It would be simple. Make a note for the fleet admirals. Once we finish processing this batch, An alarm cut through the air. Red lights flashed across every screen in the command center. Zenvar sat up straight, his lazy comfort vanishing instantly. "What is that? Report." The sensor officer's hands flew across his console, disbelief spreading across his features. "Contact. Multiple contacts at the edge of the system. They just appeared from faster-than-light travel." "How many?" "Scanning now. Master, I count 150 vessels. They're in attack formation and moving fast toward our position." Zenvar felt a cold fear run through him. 150 ships? That was a full war fleet. No one had ever attacked Vrexian territory before. No one was that stupid. Identification. Who are they? The sensor officer worked frantically, comparing the signatures to their vast database. When he looked up, his face was pale. "Sir, they're human ships. All of them." "It's an Earth fleet." For a moment, no one in the command center moved. Then Zenvar laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the walls. "The humans? Those primitives built a fleet? How amusing. Activate all defenses. Ready our garrison fleet. We'll destroy them and add their wreckage to our collection." But even as he gave the orders, something in the way those ships moved made him uneasy. They weren't fleeing or trying to hide. They were coming straight at him, fast and purposeful, like predators who had found their prey. In the mining pit, Daesung's head snapped up. He had felt something, a vibration through the ground. Bora felt it too. "What was that?" she asked. The alarm started blaring throughout the facility. The guards began shouting in their harsh language, running toward their posts. Something was happening, something big. Daesung allowed himself a small smile. "I told you they'd come." On the bridge of the Retribution, Captain Yuna watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. The Vrexian facility was exactly where intelligence said it would be, orbiting the barren planet below. Around it, automated defense platforms began activating, powering up their weapons. In orbit nearby, 30 Vrexian warships scrambled to form a defensive line. "Tactical status of enemy forces?" Yuna asked. Minho studied his screens. "Defense platforms coming online. Count 24. They're charging plasma missiles. Enemy fleet forming up at grid 47. They're moving to intercept. Good, let them come to us. All ships maintain formation. Prepare point defenses. On my mark, we accelerate to attack speed." Through the communications channel, acknowledgments came from every ship in the fleet. The eclipse formation tightened, ships moving into mutually supporting positions that the Vrexians had never seen before. The defense platforms fired first, launching waves of bright plasma missiles. Hundreds of them streaked through space, enough firepower to destroy any normal fleet. "Mark," Una said calmly. The human ships accelerated directly toward the missiles. The Vrexian sensors must have registered confusion, because their attack pattern faltered. No one flew into a missile barrage. It was suicide. But the Eclipse fleet had been designed by humans, and humans understood one fundamental truth. The best defense is overwhelming offense. Point defense systems across the fleet opened fire. Thousands of small railguns, each firing tiny tungsten pellets at incredible speeds, created a wall of metal in space. The plasma missiles hit this wall and exploded, safely far from the human ships. The few that got through smashed harmlessly against armor plating that was twice as thick as any council species used. The human fleet didn't slow down. They punched through the missile barrage and kept coming. "Railguns, fire!" Una ordered. The main weapons of the Eclipse fleet spoke for the first time, not graceful energy beams or elegant plasma bolts, but solid metal rods accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. Simple, primitive, devastating. The defense platform's shields were designed to deflect energy weapons. They had never been tested against kinetic impacts of this magnitude. The tungsten rods punched through the shields like they weren't even there, striking with the force of small nuclear weapons. The first platform exploded in a brilliant flash, then the second, then 3 more. Within 2 minutes, all 24 defense platforms were debris. Fleetmaster Zenvar watched in horror as his first line of defense was obliterated. "Impossible! Those are kinetic weapons, primitive technology. Effective, though," his tactical officer said quietly. "Ready the fleet? All ships engage with full weapons. Destroy them." The 30 Vrexian warships moved forward, confident in their superior technology. They had energy shields that could regenerate, weapons that could adjust frequency, sensors that could track a single missile across a star system. They were the pinnacle of Vrexian military engineering. The human fleet split into 3 groups, executing a maneuver that made no sense to the Vrexian commanders. Instead of spreading out to present difficult targets, they moved closer together, their formations tight and overlapping. They're clustering. Zenvar was confused. They're making themselves easier to hit. But when the Vrexians fired, they discovered the reason for the human tactic. The overlapping point defense systems created fields of interlocking fire, each ship protecting its neighbors. Vrexian energy beams that would have struck one ship were intercepted by fire from another. It was a strategy the galaxy had forgotten, something from the ancient wars before everyone became civilized, and it worked. The human ships returned fire with their railguns, but also with something the Vrexians didn't expect: nuclear missiles. Crude, simple fission weapons that the Council had banned centuries ago as barbaric. "They're using nuclear weapons," Zenvar's subordinate shouted. "That's against Council regulations." "We're not Council members," Una said, though the Vrexians couldn't hear her. "We don't follow your rules." The nuclear missiles weren't meant to destroy the Vrexian ships directly. They were meant to disrupt. The electromagnetic pulses from the detonations interfered with the Vrexians' sophisticated shield harmonics, causing them to flicker and fail for critical seconds. In those seconds, the railguns fired. The first Vrexian ship broke in half, its hull torn open by kinetic impacts. The second lost its engines and began drifting. The third exploded when a railgun round struck its power core. "All ships press the attack," Una ordered. "No mercy, no quarter. They took our people. Now they pay the price." The battle became a slaughter. The Eclipse fleet moved through the Vrexian formation like wolves through sheep, their tactics brutal and efficient. They used debris fields for cover, fired from unexpected angles, and when Vrexian ships tried to retreat, the humans chased them down relentlessly. A communication came in on the emergency channel. Zenvar's face appeared on Una's screen, his expression desperate. "Stop this attack. We can negotiate. We'll release your prisoners. Please call off your fleet." Una looked at him with eyes as cold as space itself. "You took our people. The galaxy ignored our call. Now you learn what happens when you make humanity angry." She cut the communication without waiting for a response. "Ma'am, Strike Team Alpha reports they're ready to deploy," Minho said. "Send them in. Get our people out." From the belly of 3 assault ships, armored pods launched toward the surface facility. Inside, Commander Tae Young and his rescue team prepared their weapons. They had trained for months for this mission. In the mining pit, Dae-sung heard the sounds of explosions coming closer. The guards were panicking now, running in all directions. Above, through the toxic atmosphere, he could see flashes of light as the battle raged in orbit. "They came," Bora whispered, tears running down her face. "Earth actually came for us." "Of course they did," Dae-sung said, helping her to her feet. "We're human. We don't leave our people behind." The assault pods hit the surface of the facility with thunderous impacts, their armored hulls cracking through walls and barriers. Commander Tae-young was the first one out, his weapon up and ready. Behind him, 40 Marines in heavy combat armor spread out with practiced efficiency. "Move fast," Tae-young ordered through his comm. "Intel says the prisoners are in Section 7, Sublevel 3. We have 20 minutes before we need to be back on those pods." The Marines moved like a machine, clearing corridors and dropping any Vrexian guards who were foolish enough to resist. These weren't scientists or diplomats. These were Earth's finest soldiers, and they had been dreaming of this mission since the horizon's edge went silent. A guard appeared around a corner, weapon raised. Tae-young fired once, and the guard went down. No hesitation. No mercy. Not today. They found the entrance to the mining pit guarded by a heavy door. One of the Marines placed a cutting charge and everyone stepped back. The explosion blew the door inward, and they rushed through into the toxic darkness below. "Human prisoners! Sound off!" Tae-young shouted. For a moment there was only silence. Then, from the darkness, a voice called back, "Down here! We're down here!" They found them at the bottom of the pit, 25 survivors out of the original 30. Dae-sung was there, barely able to stand, his face gaunt and his body weak. But when he saw the Marines in their armor with the Earth flag on their shoulders, he smiled. "Took you long enough," he said, his voice rough but filled with relief. "Sorry, Commander," Tae-young replied, helping him up. "Traffic was terrible. Can you walk?" "I can fly if it means getting out of here." The Marines distributed emergency breathing masks and medical supplies. Bora leaned heavily on one soldier, her legs barely working after weeks of starvation and abuse. The other survivors were in similar condition, but they were all moving, all determined to make it to the pods. "Charges set," one of the Marines reported. "This whole facility goes up in 10 minutes. Then let's not be here when it does. Move. Out." They fought their way back to the surface, the Marines protecting the survivors with their own bodies when necessary. Behind them, deep in the facility, demolition charges counted down, ready to erase this place of suffering from existence. The pods launched just as the charges detonated. The entire facility collapsed in on itself, a massive explosion that could be seen from orbit. Tae-young watched through the pod's small window as the prison that had held their people became nothing but fire and debris. "Target destroyed," he reported to the Retribution. All survivors recovered, coming home. In orbit, the battle was ending. Of the 30 Vrexian warships that had defended Kelros Prime, 28 were destroyed. The last 2 had tried to flee, but Captain Yuna sent pursuit ships after them. The message had to be clear. There would be no escape. Fleet Master Zenvar's flagship was dying. Fires burned across multiple decks and the engines were offline. He sat in his command throne watching his empire crumble around him through failing monitors. "This can't be happening," he muttered. "They're primitives. They're nothing. We are Vrexian. We are—" A railgun round struck the ship's center section. The Retribution had fired from close range, ensuring there would be no survival, no second chances. The flagship broke apart, and Zenvar's disbelieving voice was cut off forever. "All enemy contacts eliminated," Minho reported. "The system is secure." Yuna nodded slowly. Around her, the bridge crew was silent. They had won, but the cost was real. 2 human ships had been destroyed in the fighting. 4 more were heavily damaged. 372 crew members wouldn't be going home. "Send a message to Admiral Jinwoo," Yuna said quietly. "Mission successful. Prisoners recovered. Enemy forces neutralized." As she spoke, she didn't know that halfway across the galaxy others were watching. The battle had been detected by long-range sensors, and now in the grand chambers of the Galactic Council, an emergency session was being called. The council chambers were a sight of beauty. built by the finest architects from 100 worlds. Crystal pillars rose toward a dome that showed the stars themselves, real-time images from satellites positioned around the galaxy. Usually, this was a place of calm deliberation and careful politics. Today, it was chaos. They attacked Vrexian territory. The Vrexian ambassador slammed his clawed hand on his podium. This is an act of war. The humans must be sanctioned, their fleet destroyed, their world. They responded to an attack on their own vessel, interrupted the Keltharian delegate. The Keltharians were a warrior species who valued honor above all else. A vessel that sent a distress call that this council ignored. The humans are not council members, said another representative. Their distress call had no legal standing. Legal standing? The Keltharian's voice rose. We speak of sentient beings calling for help, and you talk of legal standing. On the central display, footage from automated surveillance drones played. The council members watched in silence as human ships systematically dismantled Vrexian forces. The tactics were brutal, efficient, and undeniably effective. The Ascendi observer leaned forward with interest. The Ascendi were an ancient race, evolved beyond physical conflict. Existing mostly in energy form, they rarely spoke, but when they did, everyone listened. Fascinating, the observer said in its crystalline voice. The humans employ strategies we abandoned 10,000 years ago. Close formations, kinetic weapons, nuclear devices, methods we deemed primitive. It paused. And yet they achieved victory in under 18 hours against a numerically inferior, but technologically superior force. Perhaps we have forgotten that effectiveness matters more than elegance. This sets a dangerous precedent, argued another delegate. If we allow this aggression to stand, other young species will think they can act with impunity. The humans acted to rescue their own people, the Keltharian shot back. People who were kidnapped and enslaved. If the Vrexians don't want their facilities destroyed, perhaps they should stop taking prisoners from species who can fight back. The Vrexian ambassador pointed an accusing claw at the display. Look at the destruction. Look at the casualties. The humans are savages. The humans, said a new voice, are effective. Everyone turned to look at the speaker. It was the Torvanian minister, representing one of the council's founding species. The Torvanians were old and powerful, their opinion carrying great weight. For 60 years, the humans have asked to join us. The minister continued. We denied them because we found them too aggressive, too militaristic, too different from our civilized standards. We treated them as children playing in the garden of the galaxy. The minister gestured to the screen, where the last Vrexian ship was being destroyed by railgun fire. We were wrong. These are not children. They are a species that has clawed its way up from a harsh world, survived countless wars, and emerged with their determination intact. We ignored their distress call because we didn't believe they mattered. The minister's expression was grim. I suspect we will never make that mistake again. So what do we do? Asked someone from the back of the chamber. The question hung in the air. The council had rules, procedures, protocols for every situation. But none of their protocols covered what to do when a non-member species defeated a council military power in open combat. We send them a message, the Torvanian minister said. We invite them to negotiations. Invite them. The Vrexian ambassador looked outraged. Yes, invite them. Because right now, they have a fleet of 150 warships that just proved they can use them effectively. And that fleet is mobile and clearly willing to strike wherever they choose. The minister looked around the chamber. Would you rather negotiate with them, or wait and see what they do next? The vote took an hour of debate, but eventually, it passed. Earth would receive an official communication from the Galactic Council for the first time in history. Not a rejection, not a dismissal. An invitation. Back in the Kelros system, the Eclipse fleet prepared to jump home. The rescued prisoners were in medical bays receiving treatment. The dead were honored in brief ceremonies, their bodies prepared for the journey back to Earth. Captain Yuna stood in her quarters, looking at the casualty reports. 372 names, 372 families, who would receive the worst news possible. The victory felt hollow in the face of that loss. A chime at her door. "Come in." Minho entered, looking tired but satisfied. "All ships report ready to jump, Captain. We can leave whenever you give the word." "Thank you, Minho." She gestured at the reports on her desk. Was it worth it? All these lives? He was quiet for a moment, considering the question carefully. "We got our people back. We showed the galaxy that humanity won't be pushed around anymore. And we did it our way, not begging for help, but taking action." He met her eyes. Those 372 knew the risks. They went anyway because it was the right thing to do. "Yes, Captain. It was worth it." Yuna nodded slowly. "Set course for Earth. Let's bring everyone home." The Eclipse fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving behind the burning wreckage of Kelros Prime as a monument to a simple truth. Humanity would protect its own, no matter the cost. The galaxy had learned that lesson in blood and fire, and the galaxy would not forget. Earth's sky was filled with ships. Every new satellite, every orbital platform, every private craft that could get clearance had positioned itself to watch the Eclipse fleet return home. Billions of people across the planet stopped what they were doing to look up at the stars. The fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, just as they had left. But they were different now. Scarred by battle, marked by loss, carrying the weight of what they had done. 2 ships were missing from the formation, and 4 others limped along on damaged engines, barely making the journey home. But they had brought their people back. Commander Dae-sung sat in the medical bay of the Retribution, watching Earth grow larger through the viewport. He was connected to machines that monitored his recovery, feeding him nutrients and medicine his body desperately needed. Bora was in the bed next to him, sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks. A nurse came over to check his vitals. "How are you feeling, Commander?" "Like I've been hit by a transport ship," Dae-sung said with a weak smile. "But I'm alive. We're all alive because of what they did. The whole planet is calling you heroes." Dae-sung shook his head. "We're not the heroes. We're just the ones who got rescued. The real heroes are the ones who came for us, and the ones who didn't make it back." The fleet docked at the lunar stations, and the rescued prisoners were immediately transferred to Earth's best medical facilities. The news channels showed every moment. The stretchers carrying the survivors, the crowds cheering. The families reuniting with loved ones they thought they'd never see again. But the news also showed the other side. The memorial services for the fallen. The flag-draped containers being carried off the damaged ships. The quiet dignity of the crew members who had survived but lost friends and comrades in the battle. President Su-min addressed the planet from the steps of the United Earth Assembly Building. Her speech was broadcast to every screen on Earth and throughout the solar system. "Today we mourn," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "We mourn 372 brave souls who gave their lives to bring their fellow humans home. They knew the risks. They went anyway. Because that's what humanity does. We protect our own." She paused, looking directly into the cameras. "For 60 years we've tried to join the galactic community through peaceful means. We asked politely. We followed their rules. We hoped that someday they would see us as equals." Her expression hardened. "But when our people called for help, the galaxy turned away. They left us to die because they didn't think we mattered." Behind her, the Eclipse fleet could be seen in orbit, massive and undeniable. "We've proven them wrong. We've shown that humanity doesn't need permission to matter. We don't need their approval to defend ourselves. We are here. We are strong, and we will never again accept being ignored." The crowd erupted in cheers, but Su-min raised her hand for silence. "However, strength without wisdom is just violence. We didn't fight to become bullies. We fought to protect our people. Now we must prove we can build as well as we can fight. The galaxy is watching us. Let's show them what humanity is truly capable of." 2 months later, a priority message arrived from the Galactic Council. It was the first official communication Earth had ever received from them. Admiral Jin Woo read it 3 times to make sure he understood correctly. "They want to negotiate," he said to President Su-min in her office. "They're inviting us to send an ambassador to the Council homeworld." Su-min smiled without humor. Interesting how quickly their attitude changed. "What do you think, Admiral? Is it genuine?" I think they're scared, Jinwoo replied. We showed them we can fight. We showed them our fleet is mobile and effective. They don't know what we'll do next, and that uncertainty terrifies them. Should we accept? Jinwoo considered carefully. Yes, but on our terms. We go there as equals, not as supplicants begging for acceptance. We make it clear that we're willing to cooperate, but only with mutual respect. And if they don't give us that respect, then we remind them what happened at Kelros Prime. Ambassador Hyunwoo was chosen for his diplomatic skills and his military background. He had served as a strategist during the Mars Rebellion and understood both warfare and negotiation. When he arrived at the Council homeworld 6 months after the battle, he did so on a heavy cruiser, not a diplomatic shuttle. The message was clear. Earth came in peace, but not in weakness. The council chambers were even more impressive in person than in the recordings. Hyunwoo walked through them with his head held high, flanked by 2 security officers in full dress uniform. The other delegates watched him with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. The Torvanian minister greeted him formally. Ambassador Hyunwoo of Earth, welcome to the Galactic Council. We are pleased to finally establish formal diplomatic relations with your species. Hyunwoo bowed slightly, just enough to be polite without being submissive. Thank you, Minister. Though I note it took the destruction of a Vrexian fleet for you to extend this invitation. There was an uncomfortable silence. Some delegates shifted in their seats. The Vrexian ambassador looked like he wanted to object but thought better of it. The past is the past, the minister said carefully. We look forward to a more cooperative future. As do we, Hyunwoo replied. But let me be clear about Earth's position. We are willing to engage in trade, cultural exchange, and mutual defense agreements. We will respect council territory and regulations where they are reasonable. He paused, making sure everyone was listening. However, we will not accept second-class status. We will not be treated as primitives or children. And if our people are threatened again, we will respond with whatever force is necessary. The Eclipse fleet remains operational and ready. We hope never to use it again, but we will not hesitate if we must. The Keltharian delegate stood and placed his fist over his heart in their gesture of respect, spoken like a true warrior species. Earth has earned its place here. I, for one, welcome you as equals. Other delegates murmured agreement, though some looked less pleased about it. But none of them objected openly. They had all seen the battle footage. They all knew what humanity was capable of when pushed. Over the following months, formal treaties were signed. Earth opened embassies on a dozen worlds. Human traders began moving through galactic space routes. Technology exchanges began, with Earth offering unique innovations in exchange for advanced council science. But the Eclipse fleet remained, always ready, always watching. Admiral Jinwoo gave a speech to the officers of the fleet, gathered in the Grand Hall of Luna Command. These were the men and women who had fought at Kelros Prime, and those who would carry on their legacy. The galaxy knows us now, Jinwoo said. They know we can fight. But we must remember why we fought. Not for conquest. Not for glory. We fought to protect our people and to earn the respect that was denied to us. He looked at the faces before him, seeing the pride and the determination there. Some of you are wondering if we'll ever need to fight again. I hope the answer is no. I hope the galaxy has learned that humanity is not to be trifled with. But if that lesson ever needs to be taught again, we will be ready. The assembled officers saluted in unison. On the Retribution, Captain Yuna stood on the observation deck, the same place she had stood before the battle. Lieutenant Minho joined her, and together they looked out at Earth below. Do you think they'll ever really accept us? Minho asked. Or will they always see us as the violent species that had to fight its way to the table? Yuna thought about the question for a long time. She thought about the crew members they had lost. She thought about Daesung and the prisoners they had saved. She thought about the galaxy that had turned away when humanity called for help. I don't know if they'll accept us, she finally said, but I know they'll never ignore us again. They'll never dismiss a human distress call. They'll never assume we'll just disappear quietly. She turned to face Minho, and there was something fierce and proud in her expression. We came to the stars hoping to find friends. Instead, we found a galaxy that judged us as too primitive to matter. So we proved them wrong in the only language they understood, strength. Maybe someday we'll build true friendships out here. But first they had to learn to respect us. Minho nodded slowly. And they do now. Yes, they do now. Below them, Earth continued its eternal rotation, blue and green and beautiful in the darkness of space. A world that had produced a species stubborn enough to climb from caves to the stars, determined enough to survive countless wars and disasters, and bold enough to tell an entire galaxy that they mattered. The Galactic Council had overlooked humanity's distress call. They had assumed the humans were too weak, too primitive, too insignificant to be worth their attention. It was a mistake that cost the Vrexians dearly and taught the entire galaxy a lesson. Humanity had arrived among the stars, and they were here to stay. The Eclipse fleet floated in perfect formation, silhouetted against the Earth below. Silent sentinels, eternal guardians. A promise and a warning written in steel and fire across the void. Never again would humanity be ignored. Never again would humanity stand alone. And if the galaxy ever forgot that lesson, the fleet was ready to teach it once more. But for now there was peace, earned through sacrifice, paid for in blood, and maintained through strength.